Hello and welcome to the Authority of Love on another Family Foundation Friday. I'm your host, Greg Williams, and I'm joined today by two special guests, Jesse Green, policy analyst with Family Foundation, as our good friend David Walls is out of town this week, and Justin Warriner, who's also with the Family Foundation. Justin, give your, I know you're newer here, what's your official title?
I am the Communication and Policy Associate.
Okay, Communication Policy Associate. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me today on the show. It's great to have you guys on Family Foundation Friday. Jesse, I know you've been on a couple of times with David and I, or with David himself. Have you been on before, Justin? Were you with David one time?
No, this is my
Your first time. Okay, we got a newcomer here. I know you'll do great. Jesse always does great. So we're going to jump right in today because after last week, there's a lot to talk about, and these guys have been on the forefront of it with the Family Foundation. So we want to talk about the outcomes of the primary election. So Jesse, how about you? Give us just a recap of some of the major races and what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. So the U.S. Senate race, Congressman Andy Barr from the 6th District came out ahead of Daniel Cameron.
Right.
And so he'll be the Republican nominee for a U.S. Senate, which will be on the November ballot. On the Democratic side, we have Charles Booker won on that side, and he had an interesting path. He won basically Lexington, Louisville, and a couple more urban areas, and that was enough to carry the day for the Democratic side, which I think is a testament to the growing amount of Democrat support in those urban areas.
Yes, yeah.
Versus what Kentucky historically was not as concentrated in terms of the Democratic Party in those areas.
Yeah.
So
We've been seeing that for a while.
Yes,
and I think that just solidified the way they're working with that. So, Senate race, Barr versus Booker. How about the 6th District? Yes.
So, 6th District, we have Ralph Alvarado, who won the Republican primary in the 6th District, which is the Lexington District. So it's Lexington and the surrounding counties is the general rough estimate of what the 6th District looks like. And he will be facing a guy with the last name of Dimbo, who he ran as a more moderate Democrat in the primary. We'll see what that might look like in the general election as he has to flush out his support and whatnot. But I think that would be an interesting race to watch in the general election. It'll pit a quote unquote moderate Democrat in a district like this, which typically leans towards the Republican side, but it's not a safe Republican district. Right. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens in November in that, especially if Republicans do have a down year, which is the expectation from a lot of people. Yeah,
and then one of the other big ones was the 4th District up in northern Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. So, and in that one, we had Ed Gowrine, unfortunately won that one against our conservative ally, Thomas Massey. So he'll be going on to the general election, and he'll be facing a lady with the last name Strange, which
say no more.
Yeah,
I gotcha. I don't know her. I don't have read anything about her, but we'll leave it at that. Okay. So and before we move on to some of the state races, Justin, I know you brought up an interesting point, particularly when it comes to the Barr and Booker race. There was an article and a quote that really hit you.
Yeah, no, there was a quote like right after the primary election, an article from Ford, Kentucky, and the headline says, "Not all Republicans are racist, but all racists are Republicans." And it just seems like they're already starting the race card with Booker against Barr.
Now, let me see what you both. I'm going to get your thoughts, both of your thoughts on this. What I have found happens most of the time, they'll state what they are, they'll state their stands. Right? But oftentimes when you immediately go to the race card, by the way, the Democrats constantly are pushing the race agenda, and they're some of the most vehement racist people I've seen in the media, but the media doesn't call it that. It covers it, it flips it, right? So my thought is, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is that when you immediately do that, to me it says, we have nothing really good enough to stand on that the voters will vote for. Jesse?
I mean, I think there's a strong argument for that. You see all this DEI stuff and whatnot, which is, in higher ed, but it's also in political campaigns as well, which we're starting to see with this article about Charles Booker and voters in general. Yeah. And, what it is it's trying to cast the other your political opponent as some evil force that's gonna go after people who don't look like them or who's
Right.
a different gender,
Right.
whatever it is. And really, it's fear mongering is what it is to try to fire up some
Yeah.
people. Get a lot of donations. I mean, stuff like that gets a lot of money
Yes.
poured into.
Yeah, just look at the
race.
Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yes, yeah.
If you want to go any further than that, yeah. Justin, your thoughts on that? Because you obviously sit here as a different ethnicity.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's pushed toward anybody that's white.
Yep.
Right? But we really and truly we see that as I just mentioned on the other side with the liberals, it's a constant thing, but the media gives them cover.
I think, I always tell people if you want to know racism, talk to a black conservative. I think you can look at Daniel Cameron when he ran for governor.
That's a great point.
The fact that an ad comes out calling him Uncle Daniel, referring to him as an Uncle Tom, calling him a coon.
Wow.
Like, this is just... but it's justified if a Democrat does it.
Right,
Republicans are the ones that are called racist.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
That's my point. You both kind of hit on it, but especially from your perspective, Justin, that it's a double standard, a complete double standard, almost one that we're completely silent on one side and we're blowing the horn with the top of our lungs on the other side. And unfortunately, most of our media will run with that. And it's sad. So, all right, let's. If you guys got any more on the federal races, any more thoughts on those before we jump into the state races? A couple of those.
No, I think that was covering everything we needed to cover.
On the surface, we hit the high points. That's good. All right, now one of our cohorts. In the 63rd House District here in Kentucky, they used to work for the Family Foundation. Cole Cusick. Talk about that race, Jesse.
Yeah, so this is the 63rd House District, like Greg mentioned, and what it is Cole is a former employee of the Family Foundation. He did some lobbying for us before my time, right around 2019, 2020, around that time.
That's when I was here.
Yes. And he was going up against a lady who was the most pro-LGBT Republican in the Republican caucus in the state house, named Kim Banta. She voted against the ban on trans and kids. She refused to support the bill that kept boys out of girls' sports.
Yeah.
She even submitted a brief to the U.S. Supreme Court arguing that there's a constitutional right to trans kids and that states cannot step in and protect kids from those barbaric procedures.
Yeah.
And he won. Cole won that race by 13 votes.
Yeah.
13
And to her
votes.
credit, she didn't ask for a recount.
Correct.
Recount.
Yes. She
So
was very
appreciate
grateful in
that.
her
Yes.
defeat.
Yeah.
But that's a lesson to those who try to argue that their vote might not matter because there's a lot of people voting.
Yes.
13 people decided that race where we now have a strong conservative champion going to Frankfurt instead of a more moderate pro-LGBT Republican.
Yeah.
And as well, what was interesting in that race is Cole was down the entire night, and I believe it was the last vote dump when he took the lead by 13 votes.
Wow.
And so it was neck and neck
On
the
this
entire time.
on this program, we're going to call that an answer to prayer, right? The one that we enjoy and we like, because God always answers. I will say another thing about that, because I've said this about Representative Bonta, or she was, that what I've seen is that her record on pro-life votes is 100%. But I've also made this case. Those who push the LGBTQ agenda at some point are ultimately pushing the abortion agenda.
Yep.
You can't really separate them. That doesn't mean that every single issue lines up, but when you push the LGBTQ agenda, you are literally pushing for situations and circumstances that will ultimately ask for and desire legal abortion.
Yep.
So you can't really separate that. So it's interesting. Justin, any thoughts on that? Cole? I know you weren't here. You may not know him.
So I actually worked with him when I was at the Commonwealth Policy Center.
Oh, okay, great.
I'm very excited about it. Cole's
Good.
a great guy, godly man. Love him, love his family.
Excellent.
One last thing I want to point
Justin.
out is, this is now the second election in a row that the most pro-LGBT Republican in the state house has lost to a much more conservative candidate.
Yeah.
2 years ago, former Representative Killian Timoney was a very pro-LGBT Republican, and he lost his primary by about 50 points, which is a little bit larger of a margin. But still, it's 2 times in a row that that the most pro-LGBT Republican goes down. I think that should be a sign to to those in Frankfurt. Number one, it doesn't pay to be pro-LGBT in your voting record. But number two, I think it should be a sign to leadership that there's support for pushing back against the LGBT agenda.
Yeah.
And they should take this as a sign that they should go full steam ahead in making sure we have strong pro-Christian, pro-family policies that push back on the radicals that want to indoctrinate our kids.
Yeah, David and I have talked about that often recently, just simply in saying that, and especially after this last session, there was not a lot to applaud. There really, with regard to that, pro-life, pro-marriage, pro-family. And your point is well taken, Jesse. We need to have more people that are willing to do that. If we want to have a good society, we got to have strong values. We know that. So it's good. And marriage and family is the place it mostly starts. You have to have that. All right, we got another one I know we want to talk about, 47th District. Well, there's two or three more, 47th and 69th. Tell us about that, Jesse. I know you were up on these.
Yeah, so in the 47th District, we had incumbent State Representative Felicia Rayburn. She had a 100% on our scorecard last session, or 2 sessions ago. We have not put out ours yet for this last session. And she was going up against a more moderate candidate who was getting support from a PAC that was funded by gambling interests and the Louisville Teachers Unions. And she ended up winning by about 1,000 votes. So
good.
A pretty comfortable margin.
In that area, she's up Henry, Owen County, Carroll, Trimble, you said. You told me that before, Okay, and then Steve Doan in the 69th District, Kenton and Boone.
Yeah, so he overwhelmingly won his race by about 50%.
Yeah.
And he was going up against a guy who was openly weak on the abortion issue. He was supportive of exceptions up until birth, he said. And your Representative Stephen Doan, he's been a very strong champion for life. No retreat on that issue. And so we're thankful to see him sail through his primary and return to Frankfurt.
Yeah. Have you guys talked any about? I know we highlighted the ones that obviously the U.S. races, the federal races, and now the state. We've hit 2 or 3. Have you guys? Were there any there that were disappointing from the standpoint of life, marriage, family, those values?
Well, we did have the state Senate race with between Representative Bill Wesley and Senator Brandon Smith, which we had a little bit of an interesting situation with Senator Smith, and I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
Viewers can look that up if they want to
Choose to,
Yeah, but Senator Smith did end up surviving by about 1,000 votes, which was only about 7 or 8% in a state Senate race. So it was closer than people thought, but ultimately Senator Smith did end up winning. And Representative Wesley had been a pretty strong champion on our issues in the General Assembly. So that's one where it's a little bit disappointing, but we move forward, and we'll have to work with Senator Smith. Hopefully we can mend our relationship, because we truly do want to have good working relationships with everyone in Frankfurt.
And I think he scored well on the scorecard, right? Didn't he actually score? Yeah, 2 sessions ago. Yeah. Justin, final thoughts? Yeah, I know you haven't got to say as much, but I thought what you said was powerful.
I think as to disappointing, I would just echo what Jesse said. I think Bill Wesley's a great guy, so I'm sad to see him go, but looking forward to being able to work with Senator Smith.
Senator Smith, and we hope that comes true in the general election, so we'll push for that. So thank you guys again for joining me in David's absence. You did a fabulous job as always. One final thing I want to leave you with is we need to now pray for unity, and I said this on my Wednesdays for Women show with our co-host Adia Wishner. We can't have unity without the truth of God's Word. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your prayers. Thanks always to the Lord. I'm your host, Greg Williams, joined by Jesse Green and Justin Warriner. And you're listening to Family Foundation Friday on the Authority of Love.